I look at screenwriters' war. It is war. Every word, every piece of punctuation, every piece of spacing, white space, printed space, ellipses, punctuation, every single thing, prose, every single thing, everything single thing is a book, a bullet, or a piece of shrapnel from the beginning of page one to the end of the script. And page one is the biggest battle you'll ever fight. And then the second biggest battle you'll ever fight in your life is page two, because nobody wants to read your fucking script.
What makes a screenwriter or director follow their dreams in the first place? That's what I want to find out in one scene. I want to know the movie moments that inspired artists who later found success themselves, and I want to see what I can learn from them. I'm a newer professional screenwriter. On each episode, I'm joined by a subscriber who's an aspiring writer or filmmaker because I want their perspective too. We are about to discover some things that are going to seriously level up our craft, so let's get into it.
Hey everyone, I am here with Kurt Wimmer and Kyle O'Connor today. Kyle's an up-and-coming writer who's got a producer and director attached to what will hopefully be his first movie, and Kurt is someone whose scripts I read when I was learning to do this stuff. A friend of mine sent me a draft of Salt back when it was called Edwin A. Salt and almost became a Tom Cruise movie, and I loved that so much that I got my hands on his draft of Law Abiding Citizen, read that as fast as I could, and I cannot overstate how much those scripts had an influence on me as a young writer. And Kurt also wrote and directed Equilibrium, which honestly, if you haven't seen that, just stop watching this and go watch that right now. And he's still prolific today. He's got movies like The Beekeeper, its upcoming sequel. Just go check out his IMDb. His credits are crazy. But Kurt, I'm super excited to talk to you about the movies that influenced you early on. So thanks very much for coming on and doing this.
You're 1,000,000,000% welcome.
A billion's a lot. We'll see when we get to the end of it.
1,000,000,000. The scene here
right.
is one scene, right?
Yeah, and so it is called one scene, but you said three because you wanted to reinforce kind of the same idea using three different movies, which is really cool.
What about the scenes? I don't know. I can't imagine talking about a scene in terms of a movie because a scene isn't a movie, right?
It's not. No.
If you remove the scenes that, well, this is exactly it, isn't it? If you remove the scene from the movie, the one scene, does the movie collapse?
Quite a bit of the time, I would say so, right? Especially the ones that you picked.
I don't think so. I mean, well, it depends. I mean, what scene are we talking about? That's why that's why I wanted to do this, where I thought it was an interesting question, because I noticed that there were a lot of people out there, they were talking about scenes that were in the middle of the movie. And I didn't understand that. So the question is, if you remove a scene in the middle of the movie, does the movie collapse? Now, I don't mean informationally, does the movie collapse? Because you remove that information, of course. You're like, wow, I needed to know that, right? But does your ability to like the movie, do you suddenly stop liking the movie when the scene is either removed or replaced by one that conveys similar information, but it's affected differently?
Sure.
So I thought, it's an interesting premise that you had established here, but I would argue that anything that is not the final scene of the movie is irrelevant.
I think that's a pretty reasonable argument, because if you think about the fact that like you can watch a movie and go to the bathroom and come back and pick it right back up and probably love it just about as much, as long as you're able to fill in those gaps. That tends to be true.
That there's a scene out there that inspired people to get into movies. Like, wow, I saw that scene and suddenly I wanted to be a screenwriter. Suddenly I wanted to be movies. I don't believe that at all. I think people are misguided.
Okay.
I think people are misguided. I think they might think that. They think about scenes they like. I can think of a billion scenes I like. But that's not what inspires people to get into movies. It's the final scene that inspires them to get into movies, I believe. And I actually was thinking, that here's the thing: the scenes don't exist. They're not good, generally speaking, outside the context of the larger encompassing movie that holds them, right? I mean, none of the people that have come on this, so far as I can tell, have cited scenes in movies they didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is, did it inspire you or did it influence your writing early on, right? Where like, so when I came up with this concept, I was thinking of like, when I was a kid seeing Jurassic Park in theaters, and that moment as we go into the second act and we see the dinosaurs for the first time, and how that completely like it like changed my life in a moment. I feel like, stuff like that. And I think it's interesting to kind of dig into passion and like where sparks came from, and build out
But if
conversations
you
from
hadn't
that.
liked Jurassic Park as a movie
Yeah,
and just like that scene,
sure.
you're not
Yeah, I mean,
this
I think if the
my point.
movie fell apart, it'd be completely different.
Like the movie. You like the scene within the movie, but you liked the movie. That's my point. I also actually kind of thought, this would be more interesting. Not that it's not interesting, but it'd be more interesting if you made this about one scene from bad movies that people really liked from bad movies that influenced them. No, because you see what I'm saying? That changes everything. Like this movie, the movie sucked, but this scene was so great that I carried it with me for the rest of my life. And it has influenced the way I write or something like that. That is valid, but you can't separate the scene from the movie, and there are movies you love. Like we love this scene in, Scarface at the beginning where the camera is spinning around and he's talking about eating octopus. You can't separate. That's not a great scene if it's in a movie that you hated.
So, do you have one that
And
comes to
so
mind from a movie that you didn't like, but the scene itself kind of sticks with you? I'm curious.
each one says, yeah, sure. I mean, there's a million of them, and those are the ones that are far more valuable. Like for instance, I don't remember it. There's a scene I think in Streets of Fire where they're in a diner at the beginning. I think it's William Defoe. Or William Defoe might not be in that scene, but anyway, some punk pulls out a switchblade and opens it, and the hero, I can't remember who it was, slaps him in the face and takes a switchblade and closes it in the most, competent way possible. So, I mean, there's plenty of scenes, but I didn't like the movie at all.
Sure.
But I learned something from that scene. But that's a small point, like, oh, I learned something about that scene. Like, oh, that was cool. But that's not profound. I mean, and I'm not criticizing anything. I'm saying it's an interesting question. It's why I wanted to do this, because I think it's a really interesting question to explore. And challenge I challenge people to come up with scenes in movies they didn't like. That's far more meaningful because they're so influenced by, oh, I love that movie. So once they love a movie, everything about it's great, right?
Sure.
It's great. They're, you know, they're cheerleaders for the movie. So
Well,
anyway,
because you like don't want to. If you love a movie, you don't want to disrupt the spell by thinking about the stuff that you might be critical of, right? Like sometimes you just kind of want to
talking
like
about nothing I
like
prefer to do. Say, well, I didn't like that.
so. I just mean the sense of like so taking it back to like a Jurassic Park or stuff like that. Like I kind of cherish the feeling that I had from that, and I'm okay with the fact that like I know there's parts of that probably could be better, but I'm okay. Like I'm okay putting that aside, but I think what you're saying is actually super valuable because if you can interrogate that and kind of pick at it, it is more interesting.
What parts of Jurassic Park were you thinking about that could have been better?
I don't know. Like I said, I was saying you probably could find them, but I mean, I think I'm somebody like who, if I'm really into a movie, I'm okay kind of shutting off the writer brain for a little while just to enjoy it because I think there's value in enjoying something as an audience member and being inspired by that. Um,
If it takes steps does not interfere with your enjoyment of it.
at a certain point, absolutely. But I think a couple of missteps I can be fine with, and
It's all
it's not gonna
it's
throw me.
all it's all in aggregate. But that's just sort of beside the point I'm trying to make, which is
Well, I
um,
mean, it's interesting.
you should maybe try a couple episodes with like having some screenwriters come on and say, I hated this movie, but this scene is great. That's
I think it's cool.
I mean, when you like something in a movie that you hate, then you really like it. It's not the movie, it's like when you first fall in love. You love everything about the girl or guy or whatever it is. You love them, they can do no wrong, right? That's not legitimate. Your parents are like, no, no, this guy is Harvey Weinstein. They're like, no, but he's so wonderful. Takes me to dinner, you know. Um, so anyway, this is apropos of nothing. We can just
It's interesting. I think it's a great place to start. So I appreciate it. So do you want to talk really quickly about what the three scenes that you were talking about were, and kind of just intro those and
we'll just
say why
vamp a
you
little.
picked them?
Yeah, why I picked them is part of a much longer conversation, which we'll get into.
Great.
But for me, it's not about a scene. that, oh wow, that scene's cool, this inspired me. But it's about movies that inspire me. And they don't specifically inspire me in terms of what happens in them, but it's just the vibe of the movie that I've carried with me sometimes for my whole life, with regard to La Strada, for instance, which is a 1956 movie, which I saw. I don't remember where I saw it, but I was very, very young. And that's when it really sticks you, when you're like 6 or 7 years old, and your parents put something else on PBS that's playing on the, I remember on the weekends in PBS in the 60s and 70s. They would play foreign films, and we would sit down at 2 in the afternoon and watch them on a Saturday, which is really weird when I think about it now. But those are the things that
It's cool as
sort of
hell.
really, really stick with you. And it's not like I understood the movie, but I understood the vibe. And let me think, how can I launch and stuff? Well, let's first talk about the three movies. One of them is La Strada by Federico Fellini, made in 1956, right? And then we have Truly, Madly, Deeply by Anthony Minghella, which is 1991. And then we have um, Under Suspicion, which is also 1991. And to briefly recap, and I would suggest if people are really interested in this conversation that they stop here and not go watch Equilibrium, but go watch La Strada, Truly Madly Deeply, and
Watch all four.
under Suspicion, and then come back and press play. But nonetheless, you don't have to do that to understand it. As I said to you the other day, I listen to stuff with Quentin Tarantino talking about movies. Of course, I haven't seen, because he's seen everything, and I've seen maybe 20% of movies made, and it never interferes with my ability to enjoy what he's saying. And oftentimes, it inspires me to go see the movie, which is a great thing. So La Strada is a very interesting film, and it won the Oscar for Best Foreign Film, 1956, and it follows the adventures, but very sort of hyper real, cinema verite, slice of life of two traveling circus performers in post-war Italy, and the sort of miserable life that they're eking out. And there's a lot of gender politics in the movie, et cetera, et cetera. Not that that makes it relevant now, but I mean, it's always been relevant since the beginning of time. And he just sees her as his stooge to play the drums for him and announce him in his strongman act as he travels across Italy with her. And it's at times comical and it's at times tragic, mostly tragic, because he really treats her very poorly, and she's a bit simple-minded. She's not. She might have something slightly wrong with her, but nonetheless, she has this enormous human spirit. I mean, this humanity to her, which is incredible. Her performance in this movie has been compared to Charlie Chaplin a lot, and which it is. And you might think, well,
I
she's
could see that.
copying Charlie Chaplin, but she does it better. She almost does it better than Charlie Chaplin, and that's a very difficult thing to do, because that role in another actor's hands could have been idiotic. It could have been stupid, but she really captures her with her simplicity and humanity, and this feminine energy, uh, which feels like the core of the universe, which we all build our lives around. When we start families, and the women are the gravitas that keeps the families together and keeps men who are energetic, but can be stupid sometimes, keeps them on it keeps things together. They're the glue that keeps society together. And but he just doesn't see it, and he lives life in the moment and has no sense of why he's present in the world. He has no purpose. And little did he know that the purpose was beside him the whole time, which is Gelsomina. This is his character is in um, Zampano, um, and his little circus clown that accompanied him, who he was sleeping with, but he was sleeping with everybody, and it just broke her heart. But Gelsomina, which was played by Giulietta Messina, who, by the way, was Federico Fellini's wife, longtime wife. They died within a year of each other, such was their love affair, which I'm sure was quite complicated.
Well,
It was Italian, but I think she won the Palme d'Or for her performance in the movie. And but little do you realize that the meaning of life always took time. And the final scene, and I realized when you were talking and we were corresponding yesterday that I should have been clear on what final scene is. But I look at final scenes differently. I look at them, as a screenwriter, which is all I do, it as interior exterior. So once
Sure.
you change the interior exterior or the location, it's a different scene.
I was a
So
little unsure if you were talking about, just
I
that
know
final ending on the ocean or this kind of
my,
sequence leading up to it. Yeah.
my fault exactly. No,
No worries.
I'm talking about the final camera position
Yeah.
of these movies. And at the end, he ditches her in a very heartbreaking way, but also very empathetic, which Bellini was one of the best at. I mean, he was a truly humanistic director.
Uh,
And
yeah.
years later, he hears someone singing a song that she always sang in her simplicity. And you think in that moment, oh my God, he's going to find her again. He's realized the error of his ways. And it turns out that she died years ago in vague circumstances. And I've always been struck by the power of her dying off screen, and not just dying off screen like, oh yeah, 10 minutes ago she was in a car accident, but dying off screen years ago. It just really gets you. But anyway, the real point is the final scene, the final moment is him, which is Anthony Quinn walking on the beach somewhere in Italy, and having all the uselessness of his life, and the fact this that his life was there beside him all the time, and fought to be part of his, and he just didn't see it. And now it's too late, and there was nothing. It's just nothing. And the movie won the Oscar again for best foreign film. And it is. I remember too when I was 5 or 6 or 7. I was not. I understood perfectly what it was. And then I'll tell you why I included that movie after I talk about the other two movies. And then we can move on to Truly, Madly, Deeply, which is Anthony Minghella, who's a really special filmmaker, made some, really great things. English Patient. I'm not that huge of a fan of the English Patient, but I do understand why. It's great when I was received it. And I really like the talented Mr. Ripley. Um, but man, he was really, really talented. And Truly Madly Deeply is quite very simply a story about uh, a girl named Nina. I think it was Julia Julianne Stevenson played her, and she had lost her husband, which is Alan Rickman, or her partner, and she was devastated about it. And it had happened months ago, and she has been able to recover. She is functionally not unfunctional because of her grief over the loss of this person who's a musician like her, um, and she just can't proceed without him in her life. And she's a zombie walking through life. She's a ghost. She's a ghost. She's no longer in the land of the living. But one day, uh, her husband comes back to her. Alan Rickman, who's fantastic in the movie, so is she. He reappears in her house, the flat they used to share somewhere in London, and um, she is over the moon that he's back. He's a ghost, right? But she can touch him. She can feel him. I mean, he's always cold because he's dead, but he's not a zombie, but he's a ghost, and he's lovely. This was the way he always was. And she could not be happier to have love her soulmate. I'm going to get emotional talking about this.
I'm enjoying listening to you talk about it. It's cool.
Anyway, she's over the moon about him coming back, and she makes her feel, God damn it, sorry guys. She makes her feel
This is all good. I mean, that movie did not let up. I mean, I'd never seen it before, and just really right from the beginning, it's just got you emotional the entire time. It was unbelievable.
when he comes back and they start playing that song and they're dancing, she once again she blooms again because she's back. The man that she loves, her soulmate, is back. And this is the film begins. Of course, he can't leave the house because that's the house that he haunts. And And it's very beautiful. It gets a little thorny because, sometimes he wants to invite his dead friends over who are lovely in themselves. This small kind of 8 or 7 or 8 characters or cast of characters, and they like to watch old movies in there. And they also like to keep like the heat down or the heat up in the house because they're all dead and they're all quite cold. And you know, little things start to bug her about this person that she just adores so completely being in her life. And they sort of are an aggregate, they build and they build. And meantime, she meets this guy at work who's this kind of dorky guy, but she's kind of dorky too. And they can feel that there's a connection between them. And but there's conflict because she's almost cheating on her husband who's dead and in the house and can't leave. But she's talking to this guy. She's not doing anything with him, but it's clear there's some flirtation going. She's excited by him. And, and she has a friend who's works in the office who has a baby, you know, and she's there for the delivery. I can get emotional again. God damn it. And she helps bring this life into the world. Anyway, long story short, um, at the end, her ghost lover proves just sort of too much. They're rearranging her apartment, they're redecorating like it's arguably better, but it's different. And she ends up one day, she comes back to her apartment and her husband, Alan Rickman, is gone. All trace of him is gone. His friends are gone, everything's gone. And she starts going around the apartment and putting things back the way they were and putting away his cello, which he loved and which is representative of him to her. And you can tell that she's emerging. And then her boyfriend shows up, to take her away for the weekend or whatever it is. And she walks away. There's the most beautiful, sublime shot at the end. And this is the shot I'm talking about, where she walks away. Out of the darkness, these shapes emerge, which we realize, of course, is her husband and his ghost friends. And they go to the window and they walk. And they watch, Alan Rickman watches his wife kiss this new man and leave with her. It's ridiculous.
No, it's just great as long as you're comfortable with it. I think it's really wonderful to like.
He watches her leave, and you realize in a single instant that he is just as wonderful as she ever thought he was. But he came back not to be with her, but to set her free, to teach her that she can't live with the dead. She has to live in life. She has to choose life. And he set her free. As hard as it was for him to watch her go, he did that for her. So we don't expect this to happen. Anyway, it's the final frame of the movie. Him setting her free. And you did not know that was what the movie was about.
It was incredible.
And now we move on to Under Suspicion. Under Suspicion is one of, if not the most influential movie I've ever seen in my life. And it is, how did you see it, by the way?
I had to get the DVD off eBay. I couldn't find it streaming anywhere.
I'm glad I gave you some read time then.
Yeah, the lead time was helpful. I think Kyle had to do the same thing, right? Like,
I got the DVD, but my computer, the old one with the DVD player on it, stopped working. But I did find it online, and it was definitely worth the search.
You might share it for people where you found it online.
Sure.
So that they want to watch it, they can, because it's super difficult. It's crazy this movie is not available. I mean, it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. But nobody seems to understand that. I mean, like, the critics didn't like. I remember quite clear. I saw it in the theater. I remember crystal clear watching Siskel and Ebert Siskel was like, no, this is just a terrible movie. And Ebert really liked it. He said, he tried to explain to him, no, no, if you track it back, everything makes sense. And he's like, Siskel is dismissive. But and as were most people, and are they to this day, as is made self-evident by the fact you can't find the movie. But it is it taught that movie taught me more about screenwriting than any other movie I've ever seen. In fact, I made a small fortune, and I'll explain later if you remind me, just from what I learned on that movie.
All right, Kyle, it's your job to remind Kurt to tell us how he made a small fortune because of what he learned from it. But yeah, keep going, Kurt.
Well, so this I love it because one of the reasons I love it is just where it's set. It's set in like 1950s England, where they have these strange morality laws, where if you cheat on your wife, I don't know. But it's Liam Neeson stars in it and Laura San Giacomo, and it's directed by Simon Moore, who has done some great things. I mean, he's the creator of Traffic, among other things. He wrote The Quick and the Dead. So, not an insubstantial human being, but I think this is by far his greatest accomplishment. He wrote and directed this movie. And Liam Neeson is a police investigator who gets into some trouble during an investigation, and a cop gets killed. So we cut to him. He's off the force, and now he's just an investigator, private investigator, in this just time in London when people were trying to get sexual dirt on their spouses so they could divorce them with, I guess it was a no-fault divorce or something like that. And so, he'd burst in with a camera after he'd hired a hooker to hook up with a guy at the bar, blah, blah, blah. And he bursts in the first act, and the couple is slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered in the bed, if I'm recalling correctly. And he's like, what happened? Have I been set up here? And he goes on this trek to discover what was going on, and it leads him to Laura San Giacomo, who's apparently a lover of a guy who's killed, and she's a siren, a femme fatale, in the most classic way in these movies. But the long of it and the short of it is that the police, some of her is very good friends because they worked on the force, they start to inextricably suspect him of being the person that slaughtered these two people. And it's Liam Neeson. Of course, he didn't slaughter these two people, but he's got to, you know, he has to exonerate himself, through his abilities as this pretty crack police investigator. But listen, I mean, he's not a pure soul. Like, he drinks, and he's got some black marks on his record, but it's Liam Neeson. And you know, eventually the tide of whatever this setup is that's against him, that is these clouds of suspicion, they become too much, and he gets arrested, and he gets and Laura San Giacomo is one of the people that comes in and testifies against him because she saw somebody on a fire escape at night, and they were lighting a cigarette in a very specific way with a lighter. And then she could see it when he lit it, that it illuminated his face. And she swears it was him, but it wasn't him. I mean, it's Liam Neeson. And it's a setup, right? But it doesn't matter because he gets convicted of double murder, homicide, and sentenced to death. And there is a sequence in there where he is being hanged, which is literally one of the greatest sequences in movie history to me. And I can't believe more people are not aware of it or don't cite it, but it's fucking incredible, like what they do there. And he is saved spoiler alert, but he is saved at the very last second. It couldn't be more of a last second. It was really amazing. And because he becomes, someone finds his cop friend actually goes and investigates and finds the evidence that exonerates him. And, he gets off. And then it turns out that Laura San Giacomo was the one that set him up, and then he goes to prison. But the thing about this movie that is so great is the final scene. In the final scene, he shows up in Miami talking to the original guy's ex-wife. He was a famous artist. And she says, thanks for planting the evidence that would exonerate you and give me the full access to my dead husband's fortune. In which case, we realize in a second that he planted the evidence, that would exonerate him and, well, as I said, give her the money from the thing. But there's one thing we don't know. And then this is the final scene. He walks out onto a balcony in Miami and he pulls out his lighter, snaps it, and lights a cigarette. And we realize in that instant, in that one instant, like 1 second, he murdered those people. He is the scumbag that everybody told us he was throughout the movie. Throughout the movie, they told us, you did this, you did that, you did this, you did that. He's like, no, I didn't. Liam Neeson, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I swear to God, I did it. We believe him. But in that one moment, we realize, oh, fuck, we've been hacked. And in that one moment, the entire movie changes. Just like the end of the Strada, the movie changes. And it's like at the end of Truly Madly Deeply, the movie changes. And this is why I wanted to talk about end scenes. End scenes that completely take a movie that is good and entertaining, from good and entertaining into greatness in one image. That is the holy grail of screenwriting. And it is vanishingly rare to find it. Almost nobody can do it. But it is the thing to aspire to. Because screenwriting generally is just, everybody says, oh, it's an art, I'm an artist. You're not an artist. You are not an artist. Until you can do that, you're not an artist. You're just a craftsman at best. And I would love if more people understood it. I don't think it will change anything because it's so hard to do that, because the movie and the kind of the best example, the most obvious example of this, but also Truly Madly Deeply, is how perfectly the movie has to be constructed leading up to that to allow that to happen. But this is the really important thing. Okay, well, let's talk about this. Well, actually, I shouldn't have told you that. I was going to ask you that question, but
It's all good.
but it's misdirection, right? But this is the highest form of misdirection in movie making, and nobody seems to realize it. And I'll tell you why I said, because as screenwriters, we all use misdirection. In fact, misdirection is probably the most common trade in screenwriting. We all use it. Misdirection, and it's all awful. It's all awful. I mean, you do it and I do it. Maybe yours is better than mine. Mine's better than yours. Misdirection. But here's what happens: is that writers or directors or whoever fault the movie is that let's just say, and not all these movies, only one of them is about who killed who, right? But it all functions. This is a mechanism, and they're all the same mechanism, although they look like very different things. And so typically in the mechanism, they say, who killed JR, right? And then they are presented with this person who seems kind of suspicious at the moment, or this person whose actions are inexplicable. Oh, it's that one. It's that one. And then at the end, when 90 minutes has passed, the writer or the director says, oh, but no, it was this person who was hiding in plain sight the whole time. Ta-da! Well, that's really ham-fisted, and that's not art. That's not art. No matter how artfully you do it, it's not art. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because you just wasted the audience's time talking about stuff you knew wasn't true. And by the way, the audience is so sophisticated now that they pretty much know that the person you present them on page 33 is not the villain, or 56, or 72, right? They're not the villain. They know that. So they're just sitting there. Now, listen, I'm not saying people don't enjoy these movies. Knives Out is one of the worst offenders of this. I mean, it's just really ham-fisted and awful the way it does it. There's this endless parade of red herrings. And, well, why didn't you just tell us who it was in the first place? You could have done that on page 10. Why didn't you? Because you're not a good enough screenwriter to do it. And that's the brilliance of, for instance, Beneath Suspicion of us. What's the name? Under Suspicion.
Under Suspicion.
That's the brilliance of it. The brilliance of that movie and all of these movies is they tell you what the misdirection. It's not misdirection. They say he did it. Let me explain to you how he did it. It was this, this, and this. It is indisputable that he did it. But as the audience, we're like, no, he didn't. Why? We don't have one single piece of evidence accruing to his innocence, yet we choose to believe. And so the incredible sophistication of it, it's not these sort of ham-fisted, look over here while I, produce some dove over here. It is, look at me. And this is psychology, this incredible psychology where you say, I'm not going to hide anything, but I'm going to manipulate you into believing what I want you to. I'm like a hypnotist. I'm like the great Carter. You are powerless against me because I understand your psychology and your understanding of film even better than you do. Such that when he snaps that lighter at the end, you're like, oh, fuck. I was had. And you have no excuse for being had because and because they didn't present you with a bunch of red herrings at all. They told you exactly what it was until you refused to believe the truth that was in front of you. That is when things become elevated to art, you know? And the other thing too is that when you do it the other way with misdirection, where you present red herrings, a series in is agathachristie.com, right? You're wasting the audience's time. You're disrespecting the audience. Why? Yes, they walk out saying, wow, that was entertaining, but I think it's an illusion. I don't think you were really entertained. You got the illusion of entertainment, but it's not really art because you could have invented a different red herring, right? It could have been, it could instead have been Joe, it could have been Kelly, who was a red herring. They're arbitrary. It has nothing to do with what really was going on screen. Whereas when you look at um, beneath suspicion, below, what is it? Below suspicion?
Under suspicion. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having a really hard time. But so when you look at under suspicion, you're not wasting your time has not been wasted at all because the filmmaker only talked about what was relevant in the film, which is the protagonist or the antagonist, depending on your point of view. By the time they're there, nothing was wasted on false leads, false theories. You see what I'm saying? So, but you were incredibly entertained the entire way.
Totally.
Sacrifice entertainment to actually sit down and accept the challenge of manipulating the audience on a level that they've never been influenced, manipulated before. I did exactly this in Salt. I would not.
I was just going to say it. I was going to say in the first act of Salt, you did the exact same thing. Like
throughout the whole movie, I did the same thing. I told you she's a Russian spy. She's a Russian spy. She's a Russian spy. This is it. This is exactly how it happens. Winter. He comes in and says, "This is exactly what happens." I never would have write this, but when I saw in 1991, Under Suspicion, the sky opened up for me, and I realized that there is a more elevated way to approach this kind of screenwriting, and this is the most elegant screenwriting possible. And so, not only can you say, "Well, oh, I set everything up, so the ending works," but the most important part is everything was set up, and the movie was entertaining without that ending. But when you that ending, whether it's the Strada, Truly Madly Deeply, or Under Suspicion, it takes the movie to a whole different level of profundity or art. And that's why I wanted people.
Awesome. That was fantastic.
Because this is about a scene. This is not about writing a scene. This is about writing a movie because the entire movie is dictated by, Anthony Miguel is quite aware that the poignance of that final scene where he's watching his wife kiss another man and he's letting her go. Everything was constructed up to that point. However, you didn't know that was where it's going, and you were fully entered up to that point. You didn't sacrifice anything in terms of entertainment, and but you didn't know. And then suddenly he lowers the boom. It's like a house collapsing on 10,000 pounds of bricks, and suddenly, but it's profound. And so the difference is, it's like most movies, the vast majority of them, they build, making a movie, writing a script is akin to building a house. You build a house in the mind of your audience, right? And most people, they build a house, let's say it's in Flint, Michigan. No offense to people in Flint, Michigan, but it's a house in Flint, Michigan. And then when they end, they walk out, they built this fun house. It was fun in that house. And they walk out and they're in Flint, Michigan. Well, this is akin to building a house in Flint, Michigan, and it was a fun house while we watched it. But when you walk out in the end, it's in Beverly Hills. And you're like, oh, shit, this is much better, So that's all I have to say about that.
I'm curious, were you writing screenplays before those movies? But obviously not La Strada, but Under Suspicion and Under Suspicion and Truly Madly Deeply?
Under Suspicion, but not La Strada, obviously. No, of course I was I
Yep.
was deep into it. And that's why I said I learned so much watching that movie.
That's
And
cool.
I hope that some people see this and they go back and look at that movie and spread the word about the brilliance of that movie. Um, it's incredible. It really is incredible. And that scene where he's getting executed, I'm like, wow. I remember when I was in the theater, I was like, wow, I've never seen this before.
That's
Not on
that's
not on
awesome.
that level.
Um, I'm one thing that's funny to me is because you were talking about we were
Let me
talking about
interrupt you real
scenes.
quick. I want to
What's
interrupt you
that?
real I want to interrupt you real quickly because that scene that we're talking about where he's getting executed, it is so intense and you are so intensely terrified for him. It's a brilliant the way Simon Moore integrated that into the movie because it forces you to so deeply pick a side with Liam Neeson, like
Absolutely.
so deeply that the betrayal at the end is like boom, mind blown. You were ready to get, your SEAL team buddies to go in that prison and rescue him, right? So, yeah, that's the highest. Listen, there's all different kinds of way to make good movies and great movies. This is not the only way. However, a lot of times, good movies and great movies, you have a good script that's elevated by a director into a great movie. In this particular case, I believe it's the highest form of screenwriting. And because Anthony Minghella does it, he almost sort of did an English patient as well. I would submit that it's the highest form of the art and the most difficult form of the art. I don't remember where it's going with that, but yeah.
I love it. It's great. I think the hanging scene that you mentioned is interesting because of what we were talking about before you started kind of going through the movies, where if you remove certain scenes, does it change the movie and does the movie fall apart? And also, are there scenes that you have issues with in otherwise great movies? And for me, I'm kind of able to ignore it. And so for the hanging scene, as I'm watching it through for the first time, exactly as you said, I'm wrapped. Like I'm like, I mean, it's got you on edge all the way through. Once I saw the ending and realized what it meant, my like writer brain turned on for a second. It was kind of like, man, would he have set him if he set everything else up? Would he have set himself up to get that close to death or not? And then I was like, you know what? I'm just not even going to think about that because I loved the experience of watching this
I can
so
answer that
much.
question. I can answer that question. That was just unfortunate for him. But you remember, he was there telling his friend, "You've got to look. That thumb is in there somewhere. You've got to go look.
Right,
Look,
right.
the guy found it the last second. That wasn't Liam Neeson's fault. Thank God for him. It could have been 5 seconds later or 1 second later, right? And so he didn't plan on, I'm just going to get saved at the last second. No, he would have been much more happy if he'd been saved the night before, right?
Right, right.
Turn your writer brain off, bro.
Fair enough. No, but I loved him, and I think it's a really cool lesson to look at. Like I didn't realize that's where you were going to take it. I thought you were going to talk more about you know connection through humanity and things like that kind of demonstrated in different ways, and that's such a cool way to look at it. Like in terms of just like that final image, final scene being the thing that completely changes the movie.
This is why
That's pretty special.
this is why we make movies. The point is the end. I mean, well, if you this is why science fiction never ever 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 works, and I'll debate any of this in TV. It never works on TV because science fiction is thematic. I mean, I'm not talking about Battlestar Galactica. That's not science fiction. That's just pirate movies in outer space. I'm talking about true science fiction that is idea based. And the reason science fiction exists is to examine our contemporary society by removing it and compartmentalizing it into a society where, well, there's no politics. Like what happened to who's president today and all that. And all that's, so like equilibrium, for instance. We interrogate the profound effect and importance of human feeling by removing it into a world where it's entirely focused on feeling, right? But that's thematic. And once you get the theme, it's a race to the end. And the audience can only withstand maybe an hour and 40 minutes of that. There's no reason, once you've understood what it's about, to continue to have episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. You're just beating a dead horse. That's why science fiction always works very well. As even to The Arrival over 7 episodes, people are like, okay, fuck, I got it already. So um, movies are Under Suspicion is not thematic, but it functions the same way, which is why I included it. Though Truly Madly Deep is highly thematic. La Strada is highly thematic, and the theme is the point. But the point cannot be if the point was expressed halfway through the movie. Where do you go from there? All right, let's go. I'm done. Right? Construct the movie such that the theme it's not laid out for you. It's not explained to you, but you are a field that is being planted during the movie. And the final scene is the harvest of everything that's planted. You didn't know. You were just lying there fallow and someone came and stuck seeds in you. But at the end, the rain comes and you explode into growth. And um, Mark Twain wrote a book called Innocents Abroad once, where he went and traveled in Germany. And I always liked this story of his. And if you're not watching these movies, you should be reading everything Mark Twain did. And he said, because in German, the verb comes at the end of the sentence, generally speaking. And he said in German, once he had to read an entire book to find out what it was about, because the punctuation was the verb on the end. And the Germans have wildly long sentences sometimes and wildly long constructions of words. But this is the same thing. The punctuation. That's why you sat down to write them. Now, I'm not talking about an action film like The Beekeeper or something. That's not the one. But, if you're making a movie that has some grit to it, the point is the reason you wrote the movie is expressed in the final moment. And this is, I mean, it's like anything, a debate or what I'm saying about now. The point should be expressed ultimately, not in a median or beginning sense. But this is an art form, a tremendous art form. And I reiterate, in my opinion, most screenwriting the vast majority is not art, it's craft, to varying degrees of competence. But when you can do this, if you can do this, it is art. And I've done it on a couple of scripts, but none of them have been made yet. I mean, yet to be made. I long to do that. But it is something I always keep in mind that I believe it is the highest form of the craft. And that's what I have to say about that.
Kyle, I'm curious. Is that where you thought he was going with these three movies, or where was your head at with it?
I was honestly just burning with curiosity. I thought it was such an amazing, just a crazy mix of three different movies.
Yeah.
And watching and studying them, I just wanted to hear, exactly where his head was at, why those three in particular were the three he chose. And yeah, I'm just soaking this up. It's very interesting. And yeah, I didn't have any expectations as to what and why those were the three he chose, but very interesting, definitely.
I'm very curious actually because I had kind of when I was prepping for this, I read an old interview you did, Kurt, where you said, I don't know if maybe you've shifted this at all, but I have a feeling you haven't based on what you've been saying.
I hate
One of the things, if you could change one thing about the industry, it's that it kind of runs on high concept because, in your opinion, character is plot. And I'm curious if like the movies that you or the scripts that you've written that haven't gotten made yet are kind of in that space where they're much more character driven, and that is that part of the challenge behind it, in terms of kind of getting
I
the
don't know.
momentum behind them.
I mean, that is the challenge behind it. So the real challenge, this is what I'm going to talk about. These movies all stand as top tier entertainment by themselves without
Right.
that final scene. Top tier entertainment. That final scene elevates them. So the real trick is to make stuff that's profound. I mean, Truly Madly Deeply is a profound movie,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because of the final scene. And the trick is how you make it high concept and commercial. A grieving woman's dead husband comes back to reawaken her in life. Amazing. That's commercial. How do you make commercial and then make it take a nakedly commercial and suddenly in a last instant make it profound, turn it from commerce to art? And so I don't think it should not be exclusive. Like, well, I have to make some sort of navel gazing exegesis on, I don't know, whatever, why rabbits aren't elected president more often. Um,
So I imagine that's got to play into, and probably even more so as you kind of embraced like those ideas, but I imagine it's got to play into how you're breaking stories and even coming up with ideas. Like when you, in terms of like
No,
how are you able to talk about like 'cause a lot of the stuff that you do is pretty high concept, at least in terms of what's been made, right? Like, I mean, it's some of it's very high concept, and it's interesting to hear, to know that like that's one of your major frustrations of the industry at the same time. And so do you think about that really actively, like when you've got something that means
no,
something
no,
to
not at all.
you?
I don't. First of all, first of all, don't think about movies. Just write them. Write first, think later. That's my philosophy. Write first, ask questions later. You might be missing the point slightly, though, um,
Maybe.
which is you don't sit down and say, okay, well, how do I make this resolve in a way that would be really cool or would be profound? No, that's why you sit down in the first place. You have this, it's not an idea, it's a feeling. Like this feeling of, again, of Alan Rickman watching Juliet Stevenson kissing another man and allowing her to walk out of, freeing her. That is what started. None of it existed for Anthony Minghella prior to that. It was just that thing about grief and re-entering life, re-entering life. That was it. That final scene is why he wrote the rest of the movie. So you don't have to think about anything. You already know why you're writing the movie. That's the whole point when I brought the Mark Twain example. The verb at the end is the punctuation. It's why the book was written. And you can't write the book unless you know the end, the very end. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it writes. It's a question of, if you feel it deeply, you have to feel the end. I always look at movies, screenplays, movies in general, when I write them, as being on top of a mountain in the Philippines, in, Mindanao or something like that. And with this really dense jungle descending away off it. And wait, over there's another mountain. Maybe it's a couple miles away, I don't know. And there's a lighthouse on top of it. And I know that lighthouse is the point. The lighthouse is the end. It is why I wrote this script. This is why I'm writing the script. And I need to get there. Now, when I descend into the jungle, I have no idea what's there waiting for me, but I know what direction I have to go. And everything in my journey therein is in service of getting to that lighthouse. Everything. And if you look at these movies, it's called that. I mean, I'm not telling you that you don't know. It is really powerfully evident that it was all constructed. But I do have an interesting story about Strada, however, because I made the
Great.
presumption, sort of trying to explain at the beginning of this what it was sort of about. That was sort of what it's about to me, but I don't even believe that myself. I mean, I'm just sort of struggling because I had to encapsulate it for your audience, sort of what the movie was. But I was one of my great friends in life was Dino De Laurentiis, and we're probably 40 years apart in age or more, I don't know, but we had an enormous friendship. We were very close. I was very fortunate that he just dug me out of somewhere, and he loved me and I loved him. And he made, him and Carlo Ponti produced La Strada, and which they won the Oscar for. And I had the privilege. He always told me, he said, and this is the beauty. I mean, La Strada, I mean, it won the Oscar for a reason, and it is one of the great classics of all time. He said to Federico, and this is the beauty of Dino. He just got out of his own way. I mean, he let great people do what they were going to. I have another story which I'll tell you, which is apropos not of this, but immediately hereafter, he said to, hey, Kurt, so George said, no. He said, I'm not going to do my Dino imitation, but it's so easy because everybody said, "You're the thing, we're done." Uh, but he said, Fellini, he said, Federico, it's halfway through production. He says, Federico, uh, what is this about? And it's telling that he only asks Fellini halfway through the movie what it's about. But and my next story will illuminate that even more greatly. And Fellini said to him, said, Dino, I don't know, but I know it's about something. And when you watch this movie, you can feel that. You can feel. So he did not necessarily construct the movie based on the ending, but he knew the ending of it. But it is not as meticulously constructed as the other two movies, but it works even better, even more profoundly, because it is so meandering that it meanders into absolute Oscar-winning perfection.
I
That
mean,
is
the movie is joyful at times and fun and ridiculous and like in a good way, and then it ends on like that deep sorrow. It's amazing
well,
like
he's
when it takes you through.
pretty shitty Gelson here. I'll give you, if you want, one more story that illustrates this point about Dino, and that is Dino made Dune, the original Dune, the one with Kyle MacLachlan and
Hmm.
Sting, which is a sort of fascinating movie, and he made it obviously with David Lynch as a director. Now, David Lynch had done not Animal Farm, the movies that David, what was it? I'm not a man. I am not an animal. I'm a man. What was that movie?
Oh,
Now,
it's that
you know what
but
it is.
that
Okay.
wasn't Alvin, was
He
it?
did Eraserhead, Elephant Man. Great. He did
Yeah.
Eraserhead and Elephant Man. Great. And that was pretty much all he'd done at that point. And then he got elevated by Dino, and that was just what Dino was. Dino would find people like he did me out of nowhere, and he elevated him to making this huge movie, which was Dune, which has a lot of interesting stuff in it. I mean, and it's David Lynchian, it's bizarre, but the movie was an enormous failure. I mean, it was an epic failure in terms of money, and that is the kiss of death, right? In Hollywood, you're not allowed to fail, not on that level. Um, and then David Lynch, obviously, has on good terms with Dino, nonetheless. And in spite of having lost, a bunch of fucking money, he goes to Dino and said, Dino, I've written a script and I want to make. And Dino said, what is your script? Says it's called Blue Velvet. Now, Dino did not speak English very well. And he would have every script translated. As a translator, this woman that was just spent all her day translating scripts into Italian. All right. He said, I'll read it. So he reads Blue Velvet. Now, imagine the script to Blue Velvet. That script makes sense to nobody on this planet except David Lynch. Now,
I've never read one of his scripts even. So like,
imagine it translated to into Italian for a guy who's, in his 50s at that
yeah.
point, right? An Italian who is one of the great producers of all time, but nobody's going to say that, he was comprehensive of great literature. Dino says to him, I'll do it. We'll make this movie. After David Lynch fucked him for so much money, I mean, not intentionally, he lost that money, and he made one of the greatest movies of all time. Nobody in the world would have done that other than Dino De Laurentiis. Have given
Huh.
him, I mean, without that, there would be no David Lynch ever
Yeah,
again.
I mean that I can't imagine so many of his movies like that had followed. Would
But
they
he
even
would,
exist? Yeah.
I don't think I could argue he would not have recovered from Dune had the guy that
Interesting.
who financed it originally given that him the ultimate second chance. And then Blue Velvet, of course, is Blue Velvet,
Yeah.
right? And without Blue Velvet, he would have gone. So that's is a Dino. And I go back to that story of him waiting until the middle of the movie to say, Enrico, what is this movie about? I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
It's about something. And anyway, that's sort of slightly off the point, but interesting stories, I think.
So, do you find it challenging? Like, do you find because do you find it challenging at all to find fulfillment as a writer sometimes when like you are struggling against this industry that is seeking high concept, but you're trying to push for character and push for that art and that that ending and all. Like, are you redefining things for yourself in order to make that work? Curious.
No, no, I don't. I do what I want to do. I mean, people don't always listen, but if you're not, I'm not going to. I don't listen to the. I believe the industry needs to listen to me. I'm not going to listen to the industry. They're all fucking idiots. Why would I listen to them? I'm not, But by the way, a character and high concept art. That's my point earlier. Are not mutually
Right.
exclusive. The challenge,
I
our job
totally
is to
agree.
find character and high concept. I'm not
Right.
going to say you got to like my stupid navel-gazing, high character-driven movie. Let's make On Golden Pond or Ordinary People. Nothing against those movies, but no, we're going to make uh, ordinary people with machine guns. That's your job. That's our challenge, you know? And, I mean, I've clearly made a couple movies that don't have that kind of, character, like Beekeeper. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of character, but that's a whole different exercise, which we can talk about a whole different thing. I've, completely different theories about different kinds of screenwriting, which I'm interested in. But, you look at something like Law Abiding Citizen or Equilibrium or The Recruit or Thomas Crown Affair, even, which are very character driven, yet highly commercial movies, I
Sure.
think. Um,
Absolutely.
or Salt, which is highly character driven, I think, but high concept. And this is the challenge, and this is the challenge we must accept and we must excel at. I'm not frustrated about it. I welcome it. Let's go. Let's go.
That's cool. I love that attitude. Um, Kyle, I wanted to make sure I'm kind of creating space for you. I know you had a couple questions you wanted to ask Kurt.
But hold on a sec. I want to say something. Kyle, hi. We haven't really said hello. How are you?
How you doing?
Good, good. Tell me about yourself, man. Where are you right now? What are you doing? What do you want to do?
I live in Florida.
Where?
I'm in Sarasota.
Oh my God, I graduated. Did I graduate from? Oh, I went to New College.
Wow, that's like
Oh,
10
yeah,
minutes.
college. I love Sarasota. That was fucking gorgeous. You're lucky. I don't know if you've been. Our other friend here has been to Sarasota. Nathan,
Have
have you been
not.
to Sarasota? Man, it is gorgeous there. It is so nice. And then he's in Sarasota. I went there to New College, which is located on the old Ringling Brothers estate, which goes back to the 20s, which is freaking amazing, and it's on the water. Probably the most beautiful campus in the world. And they've rebuilt it lately, so it's just extraordinarily gorgeous. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Go.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I've been in Sarasota for 15 years. I grew up near Nate in the Northeast, but I played golf in college. That brought me down south. Been here ever since. I love the warm weather. Been writing for like 19 years, seriously. First
Since you
10
were
years.
eight,
Uh-huh.
since you were eight.
No, no. About to turn 38. I started my first novel in college. I
Oh,
started as a novelist for the first 10 years. So I've done six novels and I'm on like, I think feature 14, but I love both mediums. And yeah, I just try to get better every day. And meeting Nate was a big part of me taking the next step. But yeah, I did have a question for you, Kurt. So I saw some comments that you made about salt and equilibrium, and I'll start with salt. So you said it's not about spies, it's about lying in a relationship. And you kind of took what you were going through personally and you asked yourself, how do I make a movie about this? And then with equilibrium, you were talking about hearing, I think it was Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the fourth movement. You had heard it like 1,000 times and it just really hit you and you ask yourself like what if I had never heard music once before, and I'm just curious, and then equilibrium came from that. I'm curious, with your specs for the most part, is that how your mind has always worked at the idea level? Like is that how they come to you?
well, yes. I mean this in the best possible way. If you've been paying attention, you write because you have something to say, and it is expressed in the final moment of the scene of the movie, right? And you saw how emotional I got about somebody else's movie. I'm just that as emotional when I talk about why I wrote Law Abiding Citizen, why I wrote Equilibrium was that about the music, but also I'd had oh, that was about, I wrote Equilibrium maybe 1999, something like that. And my daughter was 3 years old at that time. And I was, as all us dads do, watching her experience the world for the first time. She'd never seen anything. I'd watch her like watch an anthill, get down there. And I was like, wow, I remember when I used to do that a billion years ago. What happened? Now I walk past all that. Like, oh, it's an anthill. There's stuff in the grass. There's we just start to silo our brains off into what we think is important, and that was why I made the movie. But it was so powerfully emotional to me that I said, how do I take this emotion and just like I'm sure Anthony Minghella did about how do I express the emotion of loss and being set free from loss into a movie that entertains people but allows them to understand what I was saying. That's how I do it. With Law Abiding Citizen, the reason I made that was I had just, I mean, this is I wrote that, it usually takes me 10 years to get a movie made. I'd written that, I don't know, in the 90s, I think, maybe early 2000s. And I'd been reading a book about Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was um, the hitman for John Gotti, basically. And he admitted to killing 50 people. Like he admitted it, right? And the prosecutor said, cool, you killed 50 people, but we want John Gotti. We need your testimony. You give us your testimony. He served 6 months in jail. Sam served 6 months in jail. He got time served after 6 months. And they gave him a new identity. They gave him a house in Arizona or is it New Mexico? I can't remember. And I read that and I was like, okay, 50 people. Okay, well, that's 100 parents. Oh, wait a minute. That's 100 parents. That's 500 aunts and uncles. Oh, wait. And now we got grandparents. And then now we're up to 1,000. And we got nieces and it's Italians, right? So we got 50 million nieces and nephews, only Polly and, Christina. And I was like, what the fuck? You got 1,000 people at minimum who are not getting justice, just so a prosecutor can make his fucking bones. And it pissed me off. So I said, how do I? And here's what I do. And this will be, you can take this forward. Maybe I shouldn't tell people this, but it's quite simple what I do. Beekeeper. Did you see that movie? Okay.
Yep.
Um, it's almost always this way. I react to things emotionally, maybe stronger than a lot of people do because we're all on a spectrum of autism and emotionality. It's all combined. We're all susceptible to different ways, like color spectrums. Some people see colors more brightly than others. We're all part of this. And it's quite simple. When anything really profoundly moves me, I especially sometimes there's things profoundly move me positively, like dogs. Like I love dogs. And I've written a couple scripts about dogs just because I love dogs so much. Okay. But mostly things move me negatively. I'm pissed off about this. Like Beekeeper is a fantastic example. The concept of people stealing, like fucking assholes on a phone bank,
I could feel that. Yeah.
26-year-old cocksuckers on a phone book, calling up an elderly person who's 89 years old. Her spouse died 10 years ago. She has nobody. Her kids don't talk to her anymore. If she has them on the other side of the country, she's alone. She's living on her stipend, whatever the shit that she worked her whole life and her husband worked her whole life to have, so she can just last out her life, and sleep in her own bed at night until the day she fucking dies. Now I'm going to get emotional again. And these fuckers, and this happens every fucking day, taking from
It's
these people.
incredibly common.
He says in the movie, it's worse than stealing from a child because at least children have somebody, their parents, to go and say, "Hey, motherfucker, I'm going to kill you." These people have nobody. So, so I say, what would I do about that? What would I do about that if I could? If I could be anybody in the world, what would I do it? And I sit down and I write the script, and it's fucking blazingly, blindingly easy because I'm going to fucking kill them all, and I'm going to give myself the abilities to go do what needs to be done. And it's really that simple. So that's not thematic. I don't know what you would call it, but that's not thematic, but it's solving a problem. And of course I pick things like that both sides of the aisle will enthusiastically agree to. Fucking old people, yes, we're gonna get together on that, everybody. So that's one thing that I'm not gonna do anything that pisses half of America or the world off. But and so that's how I kind of make my decisions. So about how I kind of pick that. I'm a little bit different now. I'm not I'm not writing as thematically as I used to. And this is a whole different conversation. I'm trying to distill pure cinematic entertainment, which is purely a thrill ride, but challenging. It's a long conversation, but like you said, Tyler, I'm trying to learn every day. I mean, every day I'm just exploring new things and trying to learn new things and expanding and just get better, better. And I feel like I am, but my writing is changing. I can see it, but not for the worse. It's just moving into different zones. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question or I just diverged so far off course, Kyle, but
No, definitely. It's great. I just really wanted to hear, where your mind was at the idea stage, and I'm fascinated by your ability to blend high concept with some powerful emotions. So very interesting. Thank you.
well, you have to start with the emotions and then work backwards and say, how do I rectify? I mean, law-abiding citizens is exactly the thing. If you look at it, Kurt just said he was pissed off that Sammy Gravano or people like him who killed, admitted to killing 50 human beings, are given 6 months. I mean, and so I say, I don't say it, these words aren't occurring in my brain, but that is what the function of what's happening, the mathematics. I'm saying, what would I fucking do about it? If what would I do about it? And you saw what I did. I went and fucking I solved that problem. And everybody in the world who hates that shit says, fuck yeah, that's right. That's right. I
Yeah,
would
it was a
like for
fascinating
solving that.
exploration of it.
Thank you for solving that fucking problem for us, Kurt Wimmer, because we love going on that ride because we are, Jerry Butler in that movie and Clyde Shelton, and we love it. We're all for that. Let's go. Let's fucking go. We're the Beekeeper. We're Jason said, let's go. This we can get behind this. Let's go. Let's kill everybody.
It's like an emotional like starter gun for a race, just to kind of like
Now,
sets it off and goes.
exactly.
Like
And the emotion is at the end of the track. And your job is to get there in such a way that the audience wants this, they want this justice. They
hmm.
want they want it badly. And yeah, and they'll go with you if they believe in it. One of the biggest problems with screenwriting and screenwriters is that they don't have any real, they don't really have any real emotional skin in the game. I found a lot of it to be indicative of them signaling the feelings, but they're not real. None of them are real. Rare, real. When you see shit that's real. It's not like, well, he has a dog. And by the way, I'm a big fan of John Wick, but the dog thing was pretty was pretty cavalier. It's pretty cynical. But I love John Wick. Don't get me wrong. But a lot I see it all the time. Give him a dog. Have him protect a minority. Like, shut the fuck up. What do you really think? You know, and uh, so you have to. My point is, you really have to feel if you what you really care about. That's it. It's that simple. Write about what you really care about, and of course, if it's crazy shit you really care about getting the best recipe for barbecuing your grandmother, probably don't write about that. But if it's the best recipe for kicking the living shit out of people who steal from old people, go. Anyway, this conversation is veered way off course. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I think it's awesome, and I'm also curious. So I was going to ask you a question, which now I realize is the wrong question. I was going to ask because you had said somewhere that getting every movie made is a war, and the industry's constantly changing. And I was curious if you were intentionally reinventing things, but clearly you're not. Like clearly you're going with what's important to you. Do you think the reason that like your writing is changing is because you're finding that you are caring about new things at all, or like do you feel like that's part of what's driving it?
Take the question. No, it's always the same thing. I mean, me caring about people steering from elderly people versus me caring about how important emotion actually is. They're the exact same thing. I'm just, I think, fleeter of foot in expressing it now.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, by the way, I mean, I love my film Equilibrium. I think it's well stated and what it's trying to achieve. And I'd probably make it exactly the same. It's a very simple film too, But there are films like, well, I don't know, maybe it hasn't changed. I've just made them movies shorter and more compact and easier for the. I guess this is what it is. I hadn't thought about this until you asked. I'm making movies more easy for buyers and executives and agents. Not that I give a fuck about agents or what they think, but now when I write, it's really hard for people to say, well, that's not it. Look, if I had made law-abiding, Salt would never be made today.
Mm.
Law-abiding system would never be made today. Equilibrium would never be made today. Um, because they had a slightly intellectual sheen to them. Slightly, I say, I'm touting myself as intellectual by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe an emotional intellectual, but um, but I now write things and like people are like, oh, okay. I mean, if you say you don't get it, then you're a fucking idiot. They don't dare to say they don't, like, yeah, I don't understand it. Like, can you imagine somebody saying, reading the script of The Beekeeper and say, nah, I don't get it. Like, then they can't do that because then clearly somebody else is going to make it and make a shit ton of money,
and
right?
and so you're intentionally aiming for the super easy to get, like, high concept, like,
I'm not sacrificing. I'm not compromising myself. That's the
yeah,
key. I'm not
you're finding the
compromising
emotion.
any. I'm still making them come to me, but they have no choice as far as I'm concerned. And that's the art of the screenwriting. I look at screenwriting as war. It is war. Every word, every piece of punctuation, every piece of spacing, white space, printed space, ellipses, punctuation, every single thing, prose, every single thing, everything single thing is a bullet or a piece of shrapnel from the beginning of page one to the end of the script. And page one is the biggest battle you'll ever fight. And then the second biggest battle you'll ever fight in your life is page two, because nobody wants to read your fucking script. Nobody wants to.
100%.
I don't want to read your script. You probably don't want to
Yep.
read you want to read somebody else's script? No, I'd rather write a script than read a script.
Yeah.
And and they don't want to read your script. When you say, "Come on, bro, man, we've been best buds since since childhood, since we were 3 years old. You're not going to read my script? All right, I'll read your script." And they're like, "I'm motherfucker. I hate this motherfucker."
Yep.
They do not sit down with a bright and cheery attitude to read your fucking script. So, and that's inevitable. It is inevitable. They will never sit. I mean, unless you're Tarantino and say it's the latest Tarantino script, people are like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going to look. I'm going to like to hold my calls." But if it's your script or my script, they're gonna be like, "Oh my fucking God, here we go again. How am I gonna pass on this such that maybe if he has a great script in the future, he'll still give it to me?" That's the way it's going through the movie. And so you have to, you remember what I said earlier about the incredible power of these people that made the three movies we're talking today to look you in the eye and say, this is what the movie is about. Do you believe me? And they'll say no. And I'm like, let's go. Right? That's the
It's awesome.
hypnotic power. And this every line, is a war. The first page is the greatest war in the script because you have to get them to say, oh, fuck it, I'll turn the page. And then two, you're like, oh, fuck it, I'll turn the page. Oh, fuck it, I'll turn the page. And then they get to page 10 and like, the fuck it's gone, I'll turn the page. That's the war. That's screenwriting. And, it's not about the screenplay. I mean, it is about the screenplay, but it has to be done so artfully that they cannot resist your power. And also they don't know that you're exerting that power on them. Just like in the movies we talked about, you did not know that Anthony Minghella or Simon Moore was exerting that power on you. You did not know. And you were sucked into it. And then at the end, he sprang their trap. And you're like, that's great screenwriting.
You know what I find inspiring I mean, all that was great. Like, I mean, unbelievable, like, just like a clip. If you were to take a clip from this, like, that was fantastic. But one thing I find really inspiring is like, you clearly believe that, like, almost like people are stupid if they don't aren't into what you have to offer them in the business. Like you know that what you have is worthwhile and worth putting out into the world, and people should make it. And I think that's like that confidence is inspiring, and I imagine it inspires the people that you work with as well. Like, have you always had that kind of from the start?
No, I listen. No, I earned it. First of all, I earned it by I've written, I don't know, 400 scripts, 500 scripts. I don't even know, hundreds upon hundreds of screenplays. And it took me. I started writing in probably the '80s. You know, and that's probably hard for you to believe, isn't it? But yeah, I started writing
It's great.
4 or 5 decades ago, and I really put the fucking work in. I was driving a cab, writing at night and writing bad screenplays, like bad screenplays. They were bad, and I was like everybody, and you start out like sending scripts up and hoping that somebody liked them, and and the second you press send, you send press send, right?
Yeah, but you were putting stamps on them at that point. So
When you press send, that is the moment you realized everything you did wrong, right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
fuck, oh my God, oh my God. Wait. And then you send like half or 45 minutes said, hey, I accidentally sent you the wrong draft. Here's the
I
correct one, right? Right?
I fucking did it the other day to a friend on a new draft, and I said I'm going to do the cliche, humiliating thing and send you this updated draft, and
Right.
it's so embarrassing. Like,
No, until you press send. Because
right.
you lied to yourself. Now, this is the key is over a million pages or more of writing. I stopped lying to myself. And here's the thing is, let me put it this way. When you see a movie, go to the theater, you see a movie, which we love to do, you know that when you like the movie, right? You sit there, Kyle, you too, we're educated, we're not educated, education is good. We react emotionally and we're like, yeah, that's good. That was good. That was good. So clearly we know it works and doesn't work in filmmaking. When we see a movie that doesn't work, that didn't fucking work. So why can't we do it with our scripts? You can't watch your script in the same way you watch a movie and know, well, that doesn't work. That's the barrier that has to be crossed, where you can look at your script and say, that doesn't fucking work. You just need to know it. Just get it right the first time. That's my advice. You think, okay, that sounds like a very facile thing to say, right? But I realized a long time ago, it's that simple. Choose to be great. Choose for every script you write to be great. Just choose it.
Mhm.
And when you say, is it great? And you're like, and the little voice, you need to learn to, not you, but generally, you need to be able to recognize greatness before you press send or shit before you press send, because you know what I mean. When you press send so many times, like, oh, wait a minute. And before that, you're like, this is good. You talk to her. This is good. This is good. This is good. This is good. It is. I never read my scripts, by the way.
Hmm.
I,
Really?
because why? Why are you gonna read your
So
script?
so like you're not like going back and like rereading to make sure it works before you
Make
send
sure
it. Like
what?
you
Make
just
sure
trust
what?
it.
Make sure what? Didn't you know when you were writing? Didn't you know when you were
Interesting.
watching the movie whether the scene was good or not? Didn't you know?
Interesting.
I mean, you
I
did.
mean, I don't know. I'm fascinated by that.
You
Like,
did know. You did know. You're
yeah.
never surprised by anything. You did know. That's the whole point. Deep down, after writing so much stuff, deep down, I've got rid of that middle sense, that middle part of me that would try and justify to myself about subpar writing. And I realized, let's just skip the subpar writing and go to the good writing. Let's just do that. It's a choice. I swear to you, it's a choice. I'm just going to write
I'm
great.
I'm inspired and a little like terrified. Because it's almost like there's this like that sounds amazing.
Amazing.
And
You know,
I'm
great.
inspired and also
You know,
what's
great.
that?
You see it on the screen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And why can't you identify it on their page?
Yeah, right.
That's simple. Where the second you write a scene and you're like, and you're like, that's great. I mean, look, there's this crazy thing with ego where some people will think shit is great when they write it, particularly beginning writers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's great. But you've got to get through that. And like Nathan and Kyle have to remove from the process. And you're the audience member judging Nathan, judging Kyle, and saying, that was great. Let's go. Or really good. Really great. But this makes me want to see the next scene. Do you outline?
I do, but I find that my best work comes like when I just have I know the ending, and like a couple like beats in the movie, and then I just go. Like,
You're preaching to the choir. This is exactly what I'm saying. The ending is the lighthouse on that far mountain
right.
hill with the jungle in the middle. That's exactly it. And that's exactly what you should do. And you got some
'Cause I
set
find the magic like comes out of like being in the moment,
discovery.
you know? Like,
Discovery. This is great. How about
yeah.
you, Kyle? How about you, Kyle?
Definitely outline.
All right, stop that right the fuck now. I haven't read anything. You could be a great screener. You'll be even greater screener. Throw that shit out the window. Outlining is for amateurs. Outline is math.
Mm.
These are emotions. Movies are emotions. Like, how can you outline? Like, and then you should go here, and then we should go here.
All right.
How can you do that?
So
If
I
you're
know we're
in the moment, you know where. And the converse. Are you gonna, Kyle? Are you married?
No.
Are you have a girlfriend?
Mhm.
You ever outline the argument you're going to have with your girlfriend? Trust me, it doesn't fucking work because she's going to throw some curveballs at you. You don't know what she's going to say, and which spins you in a completely different direction. You have to be available to go wherever your character. Here's the thing: is you cannot tell your characters what to say. You cannot tell them what to do. If you do, it's false. The audience will feel it. It is constructed. It is artificial. It is plastic. You have to listen to them and go where they tell you. Now, remember when I said I'm on the top of a mountain? There's another mountain over there. We're in, southern Luzon or something in the Philippines, and it's massive jungle in between. You know you need to get there, but you don't know what curveballs your girlfriend's going to throw you on your way there, right? And you have to be open to it because if you said I have this rigid plan for getting to that mountain, you're never going to get there because she's going to fuck that shit up real fast, right? Outlines are bullshit. It's emotion. You should write the script, the scene that you want that feels right, and then say, what's next? If I were sitting in the audience, what do I want to feel next? What do I want to see next?
it's
And
so
write
much more fun to write that way too. Like
that.
the only frustrating thing for me, and maybe you have thoughts on this. It's probably because I'm earlier, like on in my career. I doubt you have to deal with it in the same way, but like I work with producers or executives and who need that outline and they need to trust that outline before we can kind of move forward to the next draft. And like, man, the amount of like wheel spinning that happens as a result of that, because like I'm probably not getting my best work down in that outline form because I know the magic is going to come on the page, right? Like, but and so there's like it's just it can feel like an endless process. How do you deal with that? Do you have to deal
Well,
with it, or do
here's
people
how
just trust you?
here's
Like,
exactly how I feel. That I sympathize with you and I hear you. And um, we're in a different place. Like, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm like, I've got one movie
You're a
and
young
like
guy.
it's
You're a
yeah.
young guy, and you're gonna get here. But the way I did it is I've made very few movies that I'm not the original writer on. I didn't. They're not spec scripts. I write
Mm.
spec scripts. You can't tell me how to outline a spec script because here's the fucking script, asshole. That is the outline, right? And when I say asshole, I'm talking to not you, but you know.
No, I feel like an asshole now. You got me. So no, it's
But but I sidestep it by just writing original shit and making, because I'm not cut out to be your lapdog. I'm not cut out to take your stupid notes. I've done it before, and I know very well how to play the game because that's why I've gotten as many movies made as I have, because I understand that it can be a collaborative, but I like it to be collaborative medium with the director and not these, little gadflies flying around, gnats flying around, mayflies flying around with their stupid opinions. Um, so, uh, this is why, this is, we're getting like crazy long stuff, but this is why I write on spec to avoid that situation entirely. There's a lot of people like, well, I'm going to go pitch something and sell it. Look, I know we need money. We don't need money. We got to pay
yeah,
things, stuff like
yeah.
that. But here's the thing is, I don't pitch. I have pitched and I'm good at it, but it's fucking horrible. I hate it. But write the script. Now, there's so many advantages. Just write the fucking script. And then, because the script is your outline, but you don't have to tell them that. If you want to pitch, if you want to do the pitch thing, which is Well, here's the thing is I write so fast that it's much more economical for me to write a script than to go pitch it. And you have to, schedule things, and it's just an enormous pain in the ass and very stressful. But when I write the script, I can don't have to tell me I wrote the script. And then I can go pitch it. And man, can I pitch that fucking script. I don't have to prepare or anything. I wrote the fucking thing. I'm going to tell you what it is, and you're going to fucking love it too. And if they have some questions, I can answer every single question you have. Why? Because I wrote the script. It took me 3 weeks, 4 weeks to write the script. Maybe it's not the perfect version script, but it is enough. And so that is what I would suggest to you in order to solve all these problems is you pitch with power, with certainty. And if they don't like it, you say, well, okay, I'm gonna just go sell the script. Fuck you. I mean, but by the way, you might be speaking of a different thing where they come to you with an idea and say, we want you to adapt this.
I mean, there's some of both, right? But weirdly, like the one that I got paid to, that somebody brought me their idea, like that was the easiest one. Like stuff that's more original, where I've kind of gotten people to pay me to write it. That the wheel spinning has happened more with those, and I don't know why that is.
Write the script. But if you write this script, if it's if it's their idea, and they're coming to you, then don't write the script, obviously, because you don't have any. But if it's your idea and you love it and you want to go out and sell it and pitch it, write the fucking script. Because if they don't like it, you have two whacks at the apple. If the pitch doesn't connect on someone, you go to market with a fully fledged script, maybe package a little bit of an actor attached. You own it. It is yours, and you make a lot more money, and you get a lot more credit. You're not just some. No offense to writers out there who take assignments, because I've done it too, but not just some asshole who took an assignment on somebody else's idea or a comic book.
Right.
Look, the difference between me and a lot of other screenwriters, not all of them, is that I write original stuff. People don't do that anymore. But that's been the rocket fuel to my career from the very beginning. I wrote my own stuff. That's what I came out here to do. I didn't come out to write other people's stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing against people who want to take other stuff. But to me, that's not really. I'm sure nobody dreams when they're a kid of saying, I want to go out as a screenwriter and adapt other people's ideas and rewrite other people's ideas. Nobody says that. Everybody wants to make their own movies, right?
Yeah, 100%. Right. I mean, like we all got into this because of the way movies made us feel, and I think we want to create that same feeling for other people with our own ideas and stories, right? And it's like
largely with their own ideas. And again, I've rewritten other people, so I'm not saying it's not a bad thing at all. But the best feeling is, hey, that's mine, all of it. And not only that, but it was the movie that you made. It was on Netflix, I remember.
Yeah, yeah.
But was it your original idea?
Original, but it's very different than what I wrote.
Okay. All right. Here's the thing.
And like, I'm super proud of it. It did well. It got seen. But the thing that I love most of mine is an audio drama that got made that is all me, right? Because it's like, it's just, that's what I set out to make. It's cool.
Well, regardless, I didn't see the movie, but here's the thing is, because you sat down in front of a blank page, you allowed people to feed their families for 5 months or 4 months or something like that. Lots of people got work. It's what you did is going to last forever. That's because you sat down with an original idea and you banged that. That's screenwriting.
Thank you for bringing it back to that. I mean, it's so easy to forget stuff like that, and it really is so special. Like,
I listen. It took me a long time, but sometimes I show up on set because if I read a script on spec, I'm producing it now. And I look, there's all these people around. And I'm like, I don't feel like great about myself, but I do, because I'm like, wow, this is crazy. This massive machine started up, just sat down one day and said, I hate the fact that people steal from old people, and that's a pretty good feeling. And these people are all going to put money, food on their tables for 6 months or so, because of this. And that's real screenwriting. And so I encourage people,
awesome.
You can pay the bills, if you got to take work, take it, so that you can do your own stuff. That's the whole aspirational goal that we're all working towards. I want to do my own things. I want to be Tarantino and do whatever the fuck I want, and people are going to love it, right? I mean, that's what we all want.
Yeah, yeah. Man, this is awesome. What a treat and an honor to kind of have you on and talking about all the stuff. It's really meaningful, and it's if you're comfortable with me kind of leaving everything in, I'd love
Yeah,
to
I'm
just
sorry I started crying. It's so
no.
fucking
Look, I mean
good.
that's part of the impetus for this whole concept, though, is because I think wonderful conversations can come when they start from a place of passion and like when you're a screenwriter or a director, like what one of the things you're going to be most passionate about are those movies that really had an impact on you, right? And so I think it's a cool way to start a conversation, and I learned a lot from it. I don't know. I imagine Kyle, you took something away too. It's pretty special. So
Absolutely. Still, there's a lot to soak in, and yeah, I love your passion, Kurt. Truly deep, madly deeply was very moving and beautiful and sad and tragic. And it reminded me when I first saw the movie Fluke, you were talking about dogs, and that just like broke my heart. But yeah, just getting to hear your, how your mind works was a real honor, honestly.
I feel very inspired after this conversation, which is about as much as I could hope for. So I really appreciate it. Kurt, is there anything that, aside from these like three movies, that you want people to go check out, or that they should check out? Or
Well, no, I mean, look, the conversation is vast as and deep as the Pacific Ocean. Maybe we could do it a future episode or something like that. I would
I'd be
encourage you
completely
to
into
do
it.
a different version of this, not to abandon this one, but it says one scene from screenwriters from movies that they don't like. That would be interesting.
You want to
Yeah.
come back on and do that sometime?
Well, I might, but you should do it with other
Okay.
people too, because
I think there's always
it,
a fear about saying publicly that you don't like a movie, right? Because you recognize the
I'm
work that people put
say
into
it all
it,
day
and
long. Why not?
yeah,
What are you talking about? No, and because you know why it's not going to be a problem is because the people, the people, they're going to come back with movies from the 80s or the
right,
70s.
right, right,
You
sure.
know what I mean? They're not going to come back and say this scene from Christopher Nolan, although there's tons of scenes in those movies you might not like. Um, but yeah, I mean, it becomes to me, it's a much more interesting thought experience rather than
It's
yeah,
cool.
I love everything in Toy Story. You know, it doesn't really make any sense to me, but you should do both. You should do both.
I think it's cool.
And but uh, Kyle, come back to you one time more time and harass you. Um, you should really experiment sometime. I did it. It was about 10 years ago, I think, where I said, I'm going to sit down and write a screenplay, and I have no idea what it's about. I didn't even know the ending, which was interesting, and it was a very interesting. And I do this all the time. Like I engage in experimentation. Like I'm going to write a movie, an action movie that's costs $3 million, and it feels like 30. How do I do that? Or, I do this all the time because I've written so much stuff. I'm always trying to experiment in so many different areas of both budget and character and action and all these things that go together in order to get movies made. Now, there's a much longer conversation about how you write things that get made. Like that would be a separate thing. But I would say you should. It was a really revelatory experience for me to sit down and write something where I had no idea where it was going, and it kind of changed the way I wrote, and it was liberating because to go back to this whole thing about outlines. I mean, I never outlined, but in this case, I didn't know any. Like you said, and I agree with that. I know the ending and a few key scenes in the middle. I think that's exactly the way to write because weirdly, I know that you thought of the ending before you thought of the key scenes, and the key scenes, which are cool and were created by you to
Totally.
support people. And this is
Yep.
exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, try writing, Kyle. Just kick that outline out the door and look at it no more. It's not your friend, that's for sure. And give it a shot. And I think you'll really enjoy it. You'll be like, wow, this is interesting. And just follow your heart. follow the emotions. And if it sucks, it just means you suck.
I'll definitely give it a shot for sure.
Kyle, anything that you want people to take a look at or shout out or where people can find you online or anything?
Honestly, I have pretty bad ADHD and not a lot of willpower or self-control, so I'm not online. I'm just trying to
Dude,
suck a
it's so
little up.
good. My life got better, so much better when I deleted Twitter and Facebook. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to get, a little bit better every day and focus on the next session.
that's cool.
Hey,
Um,
Kyle, what were you supposed to remind me of?
oh, that's right. You made a fortune, a small fortune, you said, off of what you learned
I
from.
think we actually covered that, actually. Sorry, I'll just reiterate it, though, which
Okay.
was I would never be able to write Salt, except for, and that was what, like 18 years later. I mean, I didn't write it 18 years later, I wrote it maybe 10 years later, and
Yeah, you did.
it was
But
made
you did the
19
exact
years
same thing
later.
in that as
19
a.
years later. But I mean, I have to nakedly admit that my mind was blown. I understood everything on a completely different level when I saw uh, Under Suspicion. I
That's so
saw
cool.
mechanisms legit. I encourage everybody who watches this to watch it and then watch it again.
Yeah, I
And
mean, what did I spend $6 on that DVD? Like to learn that lesson from it and to for this conversation to mean more. I mean, what a cost
nobody
of entry.
knows about
Like,
this. How
yeah.
crazy is this? It's a crime. It's absolutely a crime. But anyway, I'm giving away all my secrets, but that's all good.
No, it's great. I thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Both of you. Thanks for taking the time to hop on.
Thank you, sir.
It's been really fun. And
Great to meet you, Kyle.
You as well.
Enjoy Sarasota, bastard.
If you want to see more from one scene, you should definitely hit those like, subscribe, and hype buttons. But even better, you can become a part of this community by commenting below with your own thoughts and takeaways. And if you're interested in being part of a future episode, head on over to my website where you can find out more details. The link's in the description below, and if it's still active, that means I plan to make more of these. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.